All right, welcome back to round number 3 of 4 here at Guardian Games, hanging out in Portland, Oregon. We're Portland Paper. I'm Travis Cooper with my commentator and producer director friend,
Ian Lunger.
and we're watching a matchup of drumroll Rhinos versus 5-color Bring to Lights. It's been interesting to see this Bring to Light deck sort of pop up recently. And feels like a bit kind of classic modern deck that hasn't seen a whole lot of play in the past or in the recent past, but used to be pretty up there in like the tier 1 cycle of decks. But it is doing sort of a similar thing to a lot of the other popular modern decks. You're playing kind of these like staple cards that just are permanents that generate you a lot of card advantage. And then you sort of have like kind of a combo, two potential combo finishes with either Scapeshift or Valky. And Valky isn't going to win you the game on the spot, but it's going to usually generate a ton of advantage.
Absolutely. Yeah, a lot of ways to play 4-color control at the moment. 4 to 5 color control. As long as you're playing the powerful elementals, Ren and 6 and Teferi, you have a lot of methods to victory.
And Rhinos is a deck that I feel like it goes in and out of being really popular and sort of what people consider like tier 1, and I don't think it ever is really like that bad, but I think people maybe get a little bit bored of playing it because there's not a lot of like iteration in the deck. It's just doing one thing that is usually very strong, but there's not like a ton of like decision trees or deck building choices in there. So yeah, how do you feel about the deck?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you nut draw as Rhinos, it's up there with Hammer Time as being one of the just most unbeatable decks in the format. You just have very little kind of agency in what your draws look like besides your mulligan decisions. No cantrips in the deck. You have to play rather land heavy because you absolutely have to hit 3 lands. So you can just kind of see kind of some weird swings of variance that can be, I think, frustrating. Frustrating with the deck. Although I'll say, having said that, that I have not ever actually played this deck. I've played against it, but have not played it, so I'm by no means an expert in the deck.
All right, Chris is facing down a 2-turn clock here.
Very is good. Minus on a Rhino. Yeah. Draw a card.
So yeah, Teferi is solid here, even though the difference between play draw here is obviously like pretty large with Teferi in this matchup. It completely prevents any Rhinos from coming in if we're on the play. In this case, I guess Chris was on the play, just was unable to play Teferi last turn.
Went from a 2-turn clock to a 4-turn clock.
2 here, 4
That's
here.
what I figured. 16.
And we're going to take Teferi off the board with the Shardless Agent and come forward Chris's face.
It looks like Chris has an Omnath in hand,
Shock myself.
and Eric's going to get a shock there.
Omnath is very, very good in this matchup. Blanking the 2 damage from the Shardless Agent and being able to pick up somewhere between 4 and 7 life per turn is a pretty big game.
Shouldn't have shocked myself. Go ahead.
So we could see, yeah, it looks like we're going to ice on upkeep, and Brazen Borrow is also up. So that definitely will put kind of a wrench in Chris's plans to Omnath plus land this turn.
Yeah, I think that is why Chris was sort of slow rolling that a little bit, is wanting to get some value out of it. Chat wants to know where Chris's shirt is from. I believe that's like Brainstorm is the company, is that right?
I don't know, he's got the matching hat though.
Not Brainstorm, it's it has another It's gonna come to me in a minute. That's one of the. Chris is someone that is a very fashionable dude over there. I think it is Brainstorm. Yeah. All right, we're gonna be deploying a Dryad for Chris. There is a Valakut out there. Land drops are gonna start doing lightning bolt things. Brain dead. There we go. Not Brainstorm. Thank you.
In your, you do your thing.
All right, Chris is gonna probably have a pretty powerful follow-up turn to be able to play Omnath if you have a fetch land plus Omnath plus Dryad.
Respond to that by casting Leyline Binding.
Sure.
I'll get the
The
Rhino, and then this is my hand.
Right, interesting. Chris is responding to the petty theft with a Leyline Binding. Kind of opened yourself up to being force of negation there, but maybe Chris was hoping that was going to happen, trying to bait out a force of negation.
Yeah, I think you would have seen the force of negation on the Teferi cast fairly likely if Eric had it.
I recently played against a Rhinos deck that in the main deck was running 4 mystical disputes.
Yeah, that's dispute rhinos is a thing. It's not this is not just a random occurrence at this particular LGS.
I felt targeted.
Well, you were not. I mean, you were as a blue player, but so Eric trying to pick between. Looks like we've picked up a copy of Outburst. Have to imagine that it's likely we'll see. Okay. All right, so we're playing Murky is the card of choice here. So this is, I mean, this is going to put a ton of power on the board. So if Chris is not able to do something pretty significant this turn, although it looks like, you know, it's not out of the cards to play Dryad into kill Murktide, as Murktide's only a 6/6. But even then, the Outburst is going to put 2 Rhinos on the board, 10 power in play, even with the Murktide getting taken out with the Dryad. Kind of a tough turn for Chris. Omnath is, you know, decent potential play, but I'm not sure if we have a fetch left in hand. Doesn't look like a
It's a Brink of Light as a card in there.
Okay.
So we're just going to iterate.
Okay. Couple lands and another iteration. So, okay. So this definitely indicates that we're going to see the Dryad line. So it's got to be Dryad into probably Ketria Triome, hit the Murky. Okay, interesting. Wow. Wow.
No follow-up land drop.
Take one. 15.
Maybe felt like we have to save it for Omnath. Next turn.
Curious, because you're almost at the number that Scapeshift is going to be.
Lethal.
Yeah.
Well, you are. I mean, with a Dryad in play, you just are.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would.
Did we
think
not have
that-
another land in hand? I did.
No, there's definitely a stomping ground in hand for
Okay,
Chris.
because I mean, depending on the mountain count, I would think that.
I mean, you can play that next turn too. It's not that
Yeah.
part's not a huge deal, but getting the Murktide off the field rather than the Shardless Agent seems like a relatively big game.
Well, I mean, Scapeshift wins you the game with 7 lands. So that
Yeah,
seems,
but-
it seems like a big deal, but.
Well, we wouldn't have been able to cast
Would you like to
Bring to
run
Light that turn anyway, if that's what you're getting.
Why is that?
Uh,
Oh, because
because you needed the needed the Dryad, the Catcher Trial
Gotcha.
comes into play tapped.
I play creativity usually, so I'm just like.
But my worry for Chris is that Chris is just going to end up getting, you know, Chris could end up just getting killed this turn.
Yeah.
Cast these.
Dark Rhinos.
Which I think with the Brazen Borrower,
Sure, you're in it.
I'd go ahead and bounce the Dryad.
Take 10. Put a 3.
Huh.
Well, the borrower is on vacation. It's on its
No, I think
in
one
hand.
was just picked up, so that was potentially lethal there.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, because now we're potentially going to get punished with Bring to Light for Scapeshift. Although, actually, Bring to Light for Scapeshift would not do it because... Or does it do it?
Yeah, it depends on the mountain count, and I don't know this.
Well,
deck
there's a
well enough.
Boseiju. There's a Boseiju in hand
Yeah.
for Eric.
What's that on this deck?
Interesting. Okay.
No, Boseiju.
So
Ooh. Oh, that's
yeah,
interesting. That plays into sort of what Chris wants to do.
yeah, I think maybe this is tough because
I think you get a non-mountain, and then you bring to light for escape shift, and I think it plays 9 mountains.
well, the Dryad doesn't.
Yeah.
The Dryad makes it so it doesn't matter. So unless you have
Well, it does because I think there's a brazen borrower.
right. So yeah. So we'll see the borrower to bounce the Dryad.
So it sort of depends on how heads up. I don't know. This is really interesting.
Yeah. This is a really
fun to
heady
watch,
moment. Yeah. Yeah, Chris has got to be very careful. There's a lot of ways to mess this up. Okay, so Chris decides let's keep the mountain in the deck. The other thing is, you need an untapped land to cast Bring to Light here.
All right.
Okay, interesting. So we do go for the mountain.
Correct? I'm asking you.
Yes, it does.
Screen verdict.
Interesting.
Didn't have 2 white mana. Had to play the Dryad to get the white mana.
Okay. So Chris explaining we needed the 2 white manas that Dryad was going to give us to be able to verdict here. This is very awkward because Chris is at 1, but 1's all you need to be able to bring the light for Scapeshift next turn. And Eric did not have the 3 mana to flash in the Brazen Borrower.
Force of negation, maybe though. Yeah, we did.
I mean, that is what you want to see.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So force should do it. And I think I want to see Force pitch Brazen Borrower so that we can cast. Oh, okay. All right, we're starting with Omnath. And
Good old Royal Grazer pickup on that one.
yeah, gotta hit with this iteration. I mean, the chance of hitting a land are high, but we would have to hit. Wow, okay. So we're gonna see the Force fired off. Again, I really wanted to see that Force pitched so that we could cast the Brazen Bar.
You have the mana. You don't have the mana. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Chris started scooping up cards here, but I don't think we're not dead yet. Yeah, I think Force should have pitched the borrower here so that we could have played the one on vacation. Because now Chris is definitely in it. Okay, so and we don't have the red mana available to cast.
I feel like I'm on an
Fury.
emotional roller coaster here.
Jeez.
Like each player had lines to potentially win,
Yep.
but it's easy to say that from the booth
Oh,
here because you don't know what you're playing around.
Yeah, we have all the
necessarily,
info.
So, yeah.
Okay, here's Bring to Light. And this is going to resolve.
Bring to light.
Convergence 5.
Conversions 5, and you can.
Right, also, yes, Grazer does have reach, a very, very important part of the card, which would have protected for a turn against Borrower.
So I can get Scapeshift, and then the problem is I can get 2 Valakits, and then 3 Valakits actually, and then some mountains, and I should have at least 3. And
Chris saying he should be able to. Chris is
I can
saying
show-
what he's going to do.
Let's resolve this, and then
And-
I'm going to check before I decide.
And then I think Chris is saying I can go get Scapeshift and get these many mountains and this much stuff. And I think Erica's like, go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
Or at least resolve this spell that's on the stack.
Oh yeah, definitely have to put your opponent to the test, especially too because there's things like Boseiju, there's other like pieces of interaction that Eric could have here.
Here is I can get 3 Valakits and 3 mountains, and that's the same thing.
Yeah, and
So
that's
This should be
18.
this should be.
You got Force of Negation, Eric.
27.
Right,
Oh my
because
gosh,
the
I'm so
Valkyries just won't
anxious
see
right
each
now.
other, right?
Well, the Valkyries see each other, but
Wait,
you
what?
see the mountains.
What-
I'm
They're
sure.
Chris is
Just
talking
see
about
all
potential
three
wins here with different lands,
Yeah.
and I'm
I
like,
got it.
what? That was a force of negation in hand, right?
No,
I'm
no.
not- no.
You're gonna
No.
see me try
It
to,
wasn't?
No.
shuffle off
Well, there
Yeah,
was
we
a
used
game
that
where I
early,
had-
like
had a
on the
guy
earlier
that could
play.
that would
No,
put
I
me
thought
on
it was.
high
I thought it was
to
force
Grayson
neg-
Borrower,
negation was
but I
drawn, but
tapped
I
my
guess
hand
it
in
did
a way
not
to
see
where it
Eric's
was like
hand that well.
a wayward
Yeah.
binding or
Yeah,
something. Because I was like,
All
well,
right.
if this iteration resolves,
Right.
then I'll want white mana specifically.
Right.
Okay, that was an
Yeah,
interesting game.
you're
I
gonna
had
have to
some
stop me 'cause
emotions,
I
I had
like,
some
I'm
thoughts,
so
I had
used
some
to
feelings.
Yeah.
How did you do, Ian? How are you feeling right now?
Yeah, I think there we kind of saw like the throw counter throw, which is a thing that happens to the best of us. But the potential, like Chris was halfway to scooping up his cards and then ended up winning the match. With Grazer as a potential blocker for the borrower that we were worried about losing to. So it's it's a tight matchup, but the thing about the Rhinos deck is like it's quite punishing if you don't like it really is like playing a tempo deck where if you don't actually recognize lethal in the moments that you have it and you kind of make any small sequencing errors, the deck will punish you for that. Because you're definitely a lot of games you're just kind of eking out exactly
Yeah,
lethal.
I was pretty sure you were just gonna get a land off of that express.
Yeah, I mean, the next card was a breeding pool, so I'd at least gain 4, but I don't know that I would find a fetch. If I find a fetch, then things
All
get
right.
pretty crazy from
Yeah,
that spot.
yeah.
Taking out
But even if
some
you just gain land,
It's very
Dead-
it's like
dead
you're trying
gone?
to- hoping-
Yes,
hoping I
that's
don't
right.
land on the top right there, and then I'm
How do you feel
going
about
out.
Mystical Dispute? I'm into boarding those in if I'm in Eric's shoes.
Yep.
Looks like Subtleties.
Yeah, I
are
like
maybe-
Dispute. I'm like fairly happy to fire off Dispute against.
Teferi is, I think, what you're really
Yeah,
worried
it's a
about.
very expressive iteration. I think is a reasonable target, but you have to be careful. Like it's very easy with the Rhinos deck to kind of get sucked into this. Like I want to play a controlling role or one for one my opponent, but really you just have to land your haymaker, get him dead, and if you spend every last card in your hand to do so, that's totally fine.
Oh, looks like Chris is boarding out the iterations.
was floating around, but I've actually never played against.
Got Hollowed Moonlights and
Ooh,
some
chalices, Dovin's
yeah.
vetoes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
those are all very good cards.
yeah, it's a really nice kind of diverse suite of hate for Chris.
Did you
And-
bring the land
I,
off?
I know, I
What
have
are we
two.
doing on our
I
backup
ripped the
match?
lane. The breeding pool was off the top.
Looks
Yeah.
like we
I
got
was like in some weird spots where I had to I
looks
want
like
the
we
drive
got
to
the
play, but,
4-color
I didn't have
control
too much
deck
mana, and all I had was
versus
Stomping Ground.
Something
Stoneblade.
wild. Yeah, something wild. Somebody
Hell
that's playing
yeah.
Stoneforge and Expressive iteration.
All right.
Something fun.
Yeah, so maybe if we get finished up here, we'll get a bump in and see what folks are doing there. Or if they end up winning, might be playing on the top table for the final round.
I wanted to just cast bring to light and have 3 mana. I had enough to do that, but
And if folks are new to tuning in here, we're Portland Paper. We hang out every Monday night and broadcast 4 rounds of analog Magic the Gathering content. If you want to throw us a Jeff Bezos subscription, that helps. We sort of like do this mostly just Ian and I with our own equipment and do it because we like hanging out and providing this resource to the community. Just chatting is also rad, or any way you want to support us, just spreading the word. We appreciate it. And yeah, we're working on uploading videos to our YouTube page, so you can always check that out. We got a kind of backlog of that, but it should be more up to date in the near future. Just Portland Paper on YouTube. And yes, it is Portland like in Oregon. We are a couple blocks away from the Willamette River down in southeast Portland, Oregon on Taylor and Grand and MLK.
I'll keep as well.
All right, we got a couple keeps here.
19. Purple Forest.
I've always kind of wondered, like, what
Jessica trying to play.
when you choose to play the basic lands that are no art, all text. It's kind of like like every kind of basic land art you pick says something about you. What does the all text, no art say about you?
I feel like maybe that's saying you have a lot of crazy cards in your deck and you're going to be searching and want to know when you have basics, and that's pretty easy to see basics when they're just like that's a wall of text maybe. I don't know. I don't like them, but I'm not like feel land choices are, that's a cool thing about Magic.
Totally individual.
Yeah. And it feels like we've gotten away from the narrative of like you should always be playing snow lands and snow basics.
Thank goodness.
And I love
what a dark time in Modern.
That was so bad. That was very depressing for me because I love my Arena promo beta art basics, and it was like objectively wrong to be playing those for a while, and that made me sad.
Good.
Yeah, there was something so sad about that, and it was hard to like put words to. I think we were dealing with some COVID too at the time, but the fact that we couldn't play beautiful basics, stuck with snow basics, the snow go,
Let's see, what do we have in Chris's hand? Because we have a Hollowed Moonlight. Is that the white card that's hanging out there? Oh no, we're gonna hide it from us. Not gonna show us. All right. Oh no,
nothing.
now you're gonna show us. Oh.
He knows.
There's
The
maybe
eye
a
in
little
the
blinking
sky.
light on the camera. It's like zooming in.
We have a couple theories as to the full text basics. So if it is Hallowed Moonlight, of course, we'll just be waiting for this Crashing Footballs to resolve, or for something like this Shardless Agent to be played.
19 or 17.
I am going to.
Eric had a chance to play the Shardless Agent, I believe, last turn, unless it was just drawn and I missed that. There's also, I think, a Blood Moon in hand for Eric, but probably feeling reticent to play the Blood Moon without a forest.
Yeah.
And we unfortunately drew the fetch land that does not get us a forest.
I know. And Chris also has the forest and island, so I guess you're cutting Chris off of white, which is important. But yeah, it's not the best feeling to have Blood Moon when your opponent has two basics.
No. Although, turning off Valakut's no joke. It's possible you want to wait to play the Blood Moon until after a Dryad comes down, as, time stamps, blah, 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 blah.
That was a nice explanation there.
Thanks.
Because reasons. Wow, it resolves. Okay.
So my guess is that's not a Hollowed Moonlight then.
Shuffle that one. It goes on the bottom. I do not cut your deck.
Okay.
Great.
Good to go?
Yeah, I'll pass the turn.
Grazer does a nice job blocking Shardless Agent.
You're really wanting to make this Grazer feel relevant. You're hyping it up. You're like, Grazer, you can block a Murktide, stay in the game. You can
Basically Mox Diamond, so
It is. I think it is very interesting to see a deck like 5-color Bring to Light, which is sort of like pile with combo finished, be playing Grazer just to like speed up what they're doing. Like to play your 3-mana Planeswalker on turn 2, maybe get an extra trigger out of Valakut Dryad. Just, yeah, interesting.
when you're playing Ren and 6s, Grazer really does feel like Mox Diamond, if I'm being honest.
Dovin's Veto. And
So Veto comes in maybe a little later than Chris would like, but it will be able to pick off the next copy of Crashing Footfalls. I mean, this Grazer is going to save Chris a significant amount of damage.
0-3. 0-3 reach. That was the card that I had.
And yes, it doesn't block Rhinos that well, but, they're kind of friends, right? They're like both creatures of the forest, so I don't think it wants to. Wow, okay. We're going to force the... Okay, I like that. The fact that we were able to force the veto out when I honestly think Blood Moon might have even been worse for Eric is... I'll take that.
It does feel like a little bit of a win there for sure.
Okay, Chris has the Bring to Light. What do we see
Verdict,
here?
maybe?
I feel like it's got to be something offensive, like Valky, maybe Tybalt, because Teferi Chris pulled out.
Nice Teferi.
Teferi would be great,
yeah.
right? Because we bounce the Rhino and we're able to keep the next copy from resolving.
Can you tell me how this works?
Okay, so we'll be able to subtlety this though. Yeah, so this is important because Eric does have the opportunity to now cast subtlety.
That wasn't in the bottom.
I do not, but I do have a subtlety.
Okay.
Which I am going to cast by pitching Mercury.
Yep.
So subtlety is going to prevent, or it's not going to prevent the casting of Teferi. It's going to make Chris choose where to put Teferi, top or bottom. So Rhinos will resolve, which is big game. And Chris is going to be hard pressed with 2 lands in hand to win this one. So it looks like we went for Teferi on bottom, I think because Chris is realizing that if we draw Teferi the next turn, we're just dead on board. So you're just consigning yourself to a loss if you do draw Teferi next turn. I think that's actually really heads up of Chris to recognize that, because it can feel like Teferi's a good card in the matchup, but you have to realize like you're like Verdict or win with Scapeshift or bust here. And Eric has stated a healthy 19, so the Scapeshift win is probably off the table. So it might even be Verdict or bust.
Grab a Zia Tourist Proving Grounds.
Got the 1 card in hand.
1 card. Mystery card.
So BTL for Verdict or Verdict.
I think a Teferi works right now too. Hollowed Moonlight doesn't, but you can maybe get a redraw.
Token.
Oh, prismatic ending there. you
Yeah,
go.
I don't think Teferi would have worked.
Oh, there's
yeah.
2 tokens
Yeah,
there.
yep,
Okay,
yep.
I didn't see the dice. Yeah.
Cycle this, draw card.
And Dovin's veto drawn, I believe. Chris is going to pass a turn.
Will file an outburst.
Okay. And Chris is going to scoop him up. Rhinos takes game 2.
What? I can't even get that.
And that's how you want to draw it up if you're on Eric's side. You need just the right amount of interaction
Mattered because I probably would have went for Teferi or
to get your damage in.
Planeswalker. Valky.
Valky. Oh, you said creature.
All
I'm
right.
going to take a peek at the backup match here, see where we're at.
Still would have gotten subtlety.
And it looks like we are finishing up, and that looks like a commanding board position for 4-color control. So I think we can guess who won that one.
Again, and then like let you get Rhinos and then go for Supreme.
And is that there? It looks like they're shuffling it up for another game.
I mean, I don't know that, but like.
Depending on how quick this game goes, we may have time to hit up the end of that game. Definitely pulling out the sideboard here, so looks like that match may also be going to 3 games, or maybe they just finished up an incredibly long game 1.
There, I just needed to. If I survived another turn, I drew an Omnath off the.
4-color control can
Next turn, I
like
got land, Omnath,
eventually put
thing.
up some pressure. It's got some permanents that have power and toughness,
No,
but
it'll be on the play.
pretty grindy. It can take a while to win some games.
I'm gonna mulligan.
All right, we got a mulligan for Bring to Light, and we got a keeper for Rhinos. Did anyone hanging out in chat play Modern Monday this evening? Is that a thing? I always feel like it's kind of like Taco Tuesdays, where like there's like Modern Monday happens a lot
It
of
must
different places.
exist everywhere.
But yeah, maybe it's a Portland thing.
I think a lot of people just do FNMs around the country, but I am curious, chat. Yeah, who all attends regular events on days that are not Friday,
Let's go.
and even specifically Monday. So Eric got to do the Gemstone Caverns cheat.
Go ahead.
Go ahead and takes the play.
With a forest.
And we're going to time walk Chris for turn 2. This is the dream start if you're on Rhinos, and incredibly frustrating to play against when you've got the... Chris even has the veto in hand. Bad for him with just the embarrassment of modern riches. All right, we got a couple people doing some Modern Mondays.
Charles Agent is good.
And Chargeless Agent's going to resolve here. Yeah, this is not what you want to see if you're on Chris's side. Teferi in hand. You've got the play. You've got the Dovin's veto in hand. You've got the Teferi in hand. It feels like you are so well set up for this match, and having the play stolen from you is just, it's maddening.
Yeah, and this is like the thing where even if you have all the tools to beat Rhinos, they have openers like this where you can just be like a turn behind, and so you end up being really reactionary, and they can just keep pressuring you.
Good. I'm gonna fetch.
Yeah, because you're gonna inevitably be using a bunch of mana to deal with the current board, and it feels like the Rhinos deck, there's oftentimes at least 2, maybe 3 waves that you have to kind of deal with before you hit the clear.
It's also interesting, I find, as someone who plays a lot of decks that have Supreme Verdict in them, and you're playing 3 colors or more, when you want to still have Supreme Verdict in your deck, but you're also playing against a deck that has Blood Moon, it makes your fetching really interesting and potentially very punishing, depending on if you want to choose to play a potential verdict that you might draw, or to be able to like cast spells under Blood Moon.
Right. And then Chris finally is able to play a spell, and Eric's deciding whether or not to just subtlety it, which is just like, again, it's just maddening. And this is totally the right move. Like, you know, this is what Eric should be doing. It's just you're forcing through so much damage. Every turn that you buy where even though you're trading cards at a disadvantage with your opponent, you are just buying yourself so much damage with the Rhinos deck.
Yep. Good.
Okay, so this is the point where Chris needs to stabilize.
Sure.
So we're going to slam down Teferi again.
I will minus on a Rhino.
This time it'll resolve.
Oh, get in there.
And Eric is mostly out of gas here, so Chris really just needs to hold on, but that is lethal with the it's a swing to the face with both creatures, and I am so what? What?
Yeah.
Didn't we just have lethal?
Yeah.
Okay. I know that we don't like Teferi. I mean, I agree. I agree that we don't like Teferi. Definitely in agreement that we don't like Teferi. But death also kills Teferi.
Yeah.
Okay, but Chris is in desperation mode, so still not enough.
Oh, that's
and
like,
Eric is going to take it.
That's a little bit of rub-ins there too, of like knowing you could have died the previous turn, having the out.
Yeah,
it's a little bit rough.
Veto,
Ouch,
and
ouch.
veto,